Hi, my name's David. I brought my M3 out today for an SCD shoot. My day job is I'm head of computer science at a secondary school in Sheffield, and I also teach A-level engineering. I used to watch them race when I was younger. I remember the date, the time, everything. It was at Brands Hatch, June 1987. It was just, I just saw it and I just fell in love straight away. I've watched them race and watched them race ever since. At the time, everything else was turbocharged, everything else looked very similar. The M3 came along, it looked different, it sounded different, it wasn't turbocharged. All my favourite drivers drove them, Will Hoy, Minshaw, Soper obviously, and it just made such a fantastic noise. I just fell in love straight away. I just love the story of how it was made. It was, made from the M10 parts bin, basically. They just grabbed a bottom end from an M10 engine and put it all together. The engine's actually called an S14 because Paul Roush and his team, it took them 14 days to put it together. They used the M10 because it was very small, lightweight, high revving, it's a 4-cylinder engine, and I just love how it screams. The racing history of the car, it's won more races than any other car in history still. The road race car, it's won rallies. ProDrive won their first rally with an E30 M3. In 1987 when it really kicked in, it won. In 1 year it won Spa 24 hours, it won Nürburgring 24 hours, it won the Australian BTCC, or the equivalent of the BTCC, it won the Australian, it won the Japanese, it won the Italian, it won the French, and it won the German obviously, and the British, all in 1 year. The feeling you get going around the corner, and especially when you have a passenger that doesn't really know the car, and you go into a blind bend and just fly around it, and they almost squeal because they cannot believe it's going that quick around the corner. The throttle response is immediate, and as soon as you open the gas, as soon as it gets over 5,000 revs it goes, and then over 6,000 it goes again, then 7,000 it goes again. It just increments and increments, and it's just phenomenal. What I love as well is obviously you can poodle around in it if you wish, but you really know the speed you're going. Like I guess in modern cars that I've driven, I can be doing silly speeds and I really wouldn't know that I was doing silly speeds, but in this car, if I'm doing 60 miles an hour, I know I'm doing 60 miles an hour. The car's stored over winter, as you would expect. It hasn't ever seen snow or frost. Obviously it's seen rain, but the things that are going to be detrimental to the car, the grit, the snow, the ice, it's never seen any of those. It's lovely when it comes out after winter, when it comes out after its winter hibernation, I open the garage door and I just cannot believe it's my car. And the first time I start it up, just that engine noise, just that throaty, it annoys my neighbours to hell, but just that throatiness of the exhaust and the induction noise when I drive out of the car, it just thrills me to bits. I've owned it for the last 13 years. It's for the first 10 years I'd left it completely standard. There's nothing had changed apart from servicing and doing the bits that needed to be doing, just servicing and maintaining really. In 13 years the only thing that's actually broken is the alternator, which is amazing. I mean, they're completely bulletproof. But latterly it needed it, to be honest. I've had last year I had everything off, everything out, carpets, seats, dashboard, absolutely everything, engine out, everything completely rebuilt. I've had it rebuilt to my spec, so it has lightweight pistons from America, it has lightweight shims, it has new cams in it. They're not racing cams, but they're almost racing cams. It also has a carbon air box and a carbon air filter in it, so that makes the nice induction noise. So it should be, because it's just a general Euro spec E30 M3, it should be 200 brake with about 160 torques. It's now running 270 brake with about 260 torques. So it makes a big difference. To drive, it's still the same experience because I haven't changed anything about the setup, because the setup is what they call a Group N. So standard is what they call Group N anyway. The difference obviously would be a Group A setup for the suspension, which it really isn't necessary. So I didn't go on do anything to the suspension, just the gearbox, diff, and engine. To drive, any corner, any speed, well, within reason, obviously, and it will just get round. You kind of think it might not get round, but it just gets round. It's quite easy to get sideways, especially in any weather that's slightly inclement. It's quite easy to get sideways and quite easy to get the back end round, which I quite like, because I quite like going sideways. You can feel everything, every dint in the road, every bit of loose tarmac, you'll feel it. The feedback is just phenomenal. It almost feels sometimes like it doesn't have power steering, but it does, because it's just the feedback is just immense. And I think if you speak to other drivers, racing drivers or whatever, they'll say the same. It's the balance, it's the feedback from the steering wheel. You know exactly where you are on the road. One just came up at the right time. It was the right price. It'd been stored for 8 years before I got it, so fortunately the guy who had stored it had done the right things to store it. He'd emptied the petrol tank, all those kind of things that you need to do. Went abroad and brought it back. Yeah, it's a European. It's a Euro, just a non-cat Euro E30 M3. When I bought the car, imported the car, they weren't the mythical beast they are now, and the value, it wasn't really a value thing for me. I thought, M3, that's going to go up in price. I just thought, well, I just love it because I used to watch them race, so it wasn't ever. I mean, they have gone up a lot in price, but that makes absolutely no difference to me whatsoever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I'm going to drive it less. It doesn't mean I'm going to drive it more carefully. I didn't get it for that, and I'm not, when people talk about values of this and values of that and don't do this because it might affect the value, I don't care, mate. And it's lovely because even younger people who you think, well, they don't really know this car, but they just know this car, and they'll point and they'll pull their dad's sleeve and they'll point at the car, or you'll get the dad with his wife and children, and he's kind of open mouth watching it go down the street, and even for me, when I open the garage door, I think, this is my car. I always get excited about driving it. I always get excited about, that I'm going to have a day out in it or whatever. And even when we turn up at meets, there might be a row of Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and I turn up in this old BMW, and everyone makes a beeline for it and takes pictures of it. And I've seen lots of pictures online and lots of lovely comments online about the car. I think it just stirs a lot of memories up for people, particularly obviously if they're of an age where it was the early starting of touring car racing, and it is that visceral and noisy and oil and petrol, and they love all that, and it just brings back lots of memories. It certainly does for me, obviously. Had a wonderful day today out in Derbyshire. The roads have been amazing, slightly wet, but that's fantastic. My car likes going sideways anyway, and we just had a fantastic day.